Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into something really profound. It's about how we look at challenges, setbacks, and, well, our own abilities. It all kicked off with this observation by a young researcher, just watching kids tackle puzzles.
Mhm.
And what they saw just completely flipped their whole understanding of, coping with difficulty. So get this. One 10-year-old boy, faced with really hard puzzles, he pulls up his chair, rubs his hands together, big grin, and says, "I love a challenge."
Wow.
Yeah. And then another kid, sweating a bit but looking pleased, says, I was hoping this would be informative.
Informative.
Right. My first reaction, and the researchers too, was like, what's going on here? How can anyone love failing? I always figured you either handle failure or you don't.
Hmm.
The idea of loving it never crossed my mind.
And that was the light bulb moment, wasn't it?
Seems like it.
These kids got something crucial. That
Hmm.
skills, intelligence, qualities, they aren't just fixed. You can actually cultivate them. They weren't failing in their minds.
Hmm.
They were learning, getting smarter. And this totally clashed with the researchers' own view at the time, this idea that your qualities are basically carved in stone.
Right. That failure just proves you're not smart.
Exactly, which is so limiting. So our mission today really is to explore what happens when you believe intelligence or personality can be developed versus believing it's fixed. How this pretty simple belief can radically change your psychology, your whole life, actually.
That idea that qualities can be cultivated, it immediately taps into this huge age-old question, doesn't it?
Hmm.
Why are people different? Intelligence, character, you name it. And are those differences permanent? People have argued about this forever.
Oh, absolutely. And historically, you had all sorts of explanations. Some people looked for physical signs, like phrenology bumps on the skull supposedly showing your treats.
Right, thankfully debunked.
Yes, or craniology, focusing on skull size.
Yeah.
These seem strange now, but they show how deep this idea of fixed traits runs.
So that's one side.
Then others pointed to background, experiences, training, different ways of learning as the source of differences. But here's a fascinating twist.
Okay.
A major champion of the idea that intelligence could change was Alfred Binet.
The IQ test guy. Really?
The very same. It's surprising, isn't it? Because we often think of the IQ test as this final score, this fixed number.
Totally.
But Binet's goal back in early 20th century Paris was actually quite different. He designed the test to find kids who weren't thriving in the public schools.
Okay. So not just to label them.
Not at all. The point was to identify them so they could create new educational programs to, as he put it, get them back on track. He was a firm believer in education's power.
Wow.
He even wrote very strongly against what he called brutal pessimism. Let me find the quote.
Here. A few modern philosophers assert that an individual's intelligence is a fixed quantity. We must protest and react. With practice, training, and above all method, we manage to increase our attention, our memory, our judgment, and literally to become more intelligent than we were before. Literally become more intelligent. That's a powerful statement from the inventor of the IQ test.
Right.
So how does it line up with modern science? Where are we now on this nature versus nurture thing?
Well, the modern view really echoes Binet in some ways, but it's more nuanced. It's definitely not seen as either or anymore, not nature or nurture.
It's both interacting.
Exactly, a constant interplay. We now know genes and environment cooperate. Genes actually need input from the environment to even work properly. And the science keeps showing we have this incredible capacity for lifelong learning, for brain development, much more than we used to think.
So your starting point isn't your destiny.
Precisely. We all have a unique genetic endowment, sure, different starting talents maybe. But as the source material puts it, experience, training, and personal effort take them the rest of the way.
That makes sense.
Robert Sternberg, who's a major figure in intelligence research today, says the key factor in achieving expertise isn't some fixed prior ability, but purposeful engagement.
Purposeful engagement. I like that.
Yeah. It really comes back to Binet's insight. It's not always the people who start out the smartest who end up the smartest.
And this whole idea, this tension between fixed and changeable qualities, that's what the research we mentioned earlier spent, 30 years studying?
Right, 3 decades showing how the view you adopt for yourself profoundly shapes your life.
Okay, so let's break down these two views, these mindsets.
Let's do it. First, you have the fixed mindset. This is the belief that your core qualities, intelligence, personality, character, are just fixed traits. You've got a certain amount, and that's that.
So if you believe that.
then your main goal, almost subconsciously, becomes proving you have those good traits, showing you're smart, you're capable, and crucially, avoiding anything that might make you look deficient.
Like failure.
Exactly. The author shares this story about their sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Wilson.
Right.
Mrs. Wilson totally bought into IQ scores. She seated kids based on IQ, gave privileges only to the high IQ kids, carrying the flag, clapping erasers, that sort of thing.
Yikes. That creates a certain atmosphere.
A look smart, don't look dumb atmosphere, absolutely. So every situation, every challenge becomes a test. Will I succeed or fail? Look smart or dumb, be accepted or rejected. It's constant judgment.
Okay, that sounds stressful. So what's the alternative? What about those kids who loved the challenge?
They represent the growth mindset. This is grounded in the belief that your basic qualities aren't fixed. They're things you can cultivate. You can develop them through your own efforts, trying different strategies, getting help from others.
So it's about potential for change.
Exactly. It acknowledges people start in different places with different initial talents or interests, sure. But the key is that everyone can change and grow with application, with experience.
Does that mean thinking anyone can be, like, the next Einstein?
No, it's not saying that. The potential might have limits, maybe, but the point is we don't know what those limits are. True potential is unknown and unknowable. You just can't predict what someone might achieve with years of passion, hard work, and training. And think about the sources mentioned. People like Darwin and Tolstoy were considered pretty ordinary kids.
Really? Darwin?
Yep. Or Ben Hogan, the golfer, apparently totally uncoordinated as a child. Photographer Cindy Sherman failed her first photography course. Actress Geraldine Page supposedly failed her Juilliard audition 8 times.
Wow, okay. That's encouraging.
It really is. So the driving force for the growth mindset isn't proving yourself. It's this passion for learning, for getting better. Why hide your weaknesses when you could be working on them?
Right.
Why only seek out friends who make you feel good instead of ones who push you to grow? Why just do what you know instead of trying things that stretch you?
It's a totally different orientation to life.
Completely. The hallmark is stretching yourself and sticking with it, especially when things get tough. That's when this mindset really helps people thrive.
Okay, to make this really concrete, let's use that scenario from the sources. Imagine you're having just a truly awful day as a young adult.
Okay.
You studied hard for a midterm, an important one, and you get a C+. Yeah, rough.
Then you go outside, maybe feeling a bit defeated, and bam, there's a parking ticket on your car.
Adding insult to injury.
Exactly. So you call your best friend, hoping for some sympathy, maybe vent a little, and they just sort of brush you off. Like, oh, that sucks, and change the subject.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Okay, so how does this play out with the two mindsets?
Right. Let's start with the fixed mindset response.
Okay, with the fixed mindset, facing that string of events, the feelings are intense. People report feeling like a reject, a total failure, an idiot, even slime.
Wow, that's harsh self-judgment.
It really is.
Yeah.
They see it as a direct reflection of their worth, their competence. And then they start attributing it, maybe blaming something external, like somebody upstairs doesn't like me, or just deciding the world is out to get me.
Or just life stinks, I'm stupid. Total negativity.
Yes. And the way they cope often involves pulling back, avoiding things. You hear responses like, I wouldn't bother putting so much effort into anything, or simply do nothing.
Just shut down. Shut down, stay in bed, get drunk, overeat, yell at someone, cry, break something. It's this feeling of paralysis. And it's key to remember these aren't necessarily people who always feel bad about themselves. This is specifically how the fixed mindset makes them react to failure.
Okay, so that's one path. Now, same bad day, C+ cop, parking ticket, brushed off by friend, but through the lens of the growth mindset. How different is that?
It's dramatically different. The thoughts are immediately focused on learning and action. Things like, okay, I need to study harder, or maybe I need to study differently. I need to figure out what went wrong on that exam. I can still pull up my grade.
So, constructive thinking, even when feeling bad.
Exactly. And the coping mechanisms follow suit. It's about direct action, problem solving. I'd start thinking about studying for the next test. I'd pay the ticket. I need to talk to my friend and work things out.
Taking steps, baby.
Taking steps. Even if they feel distressed, and they probably do, it was a bad day. They're ready to confront the challenges, keep working, stay engaged. They show resilience.
It's such a clear difference. It's not about whether you like setbacks, nobody does.
Right.
But one mindset leads to feeling like a complete failure and shutting down, while the other, even with disappointment, leads to action and bouncing back.
And this gets to what's really groundbreaking in this research. We all know sayings like nothing ventured, nothing gained, or if at first you don't succeed, try again.
Sure, they're cliches for a reason.
But here's the twist the research uncovered. People with a fixed mindset often hear those sayings very differently.
How so?
They might see risk or even just effort as dangerous because it could reveal their inadequacy. Their internal logic might be more like, if you try hard and still don't succeed, well, that just proves you don't have the ability.
So effort itself becomes threatening.
Yes. It's startling, but the research suggests they often do not believe in putting in effort or getting help. Trying hard and failing is worse than not trying at all in that mindset.
That's fascinating.
And what's really new here, the core insight, is that these views on risk and effort aren't just random personality quirks. They grow directly out of your basic mindset.
All connected.
It's all connected. Teach someone a growth mindset, focus on development, and they start embracing challenges, valuing effort. But put someone temporarily into a fixed mindset, focus on fixed traits, and they quickly become wary of challenge and devalue effort.
So it's not just like reading a self-help book that says be positive.
Exactly. This research goes deeper. It shows how one thing leads to another. How believing your qualities are fixed leads down one path of thoughts and actions, and believing they can be cultivated leads down a completely different one. That's the aha moment.
I can see why people would find that revolutionary.
Oh, the researcher talks about getting letters all the time from people saying this understanding changed how they see themselves, their kids, their work, everything.
Okay, but does having a growth mindset mean you might get a bit unrealistic? Like you think you could do anything, even if you can't. Do you lose touch with your actual abilities?
That's a really important question. And interestingly, the research suggests the opposite is true. Studies consistently find that, people are generally pretty bad at estimating their own abilities, but it's mainly the fixed mindset individuals who are way off base. They account for most of the inaccuracy.
And growth mindset folks.
They tend to be amazingly accurate about what they can and can't do.
Why would that be?
Well, think about it. If you believe you can develop, you want accurate information, right? Even if it's critical feedback.
Yep.
You need to know where you stand so you can learn effectively.
Okay, that makes sense. Feedback isn't a judgment, it's data.
Exactly. But if every piece of information is either good news or bad news about your precious fixed traits, well, then you start to distort things to protect your ego. You don't get an accurate picture of yourself.
Interesting.
It connects to what Howard Gardner found in his studies of exceptional people. He noted they have this special talent for identifying their own strengths and weaknesses.
A talent that fixed mindset people might lack because they're avoiding that information.
Precisely. And ultimately, this links directly to achievement, that perseverance, that resilience you get from a growth mindset. That's often cited as the #1 factor in creative success and reaching expertise.
So bringing this all home, what does this mean for you listening right now?
Well, it means these mindsets are incredibly powerful. They shape what you strive for, how you define success, what failure means to you, even how you feel about effort itself.
They touch everything.
Pretty much. School, work, sports, relationships, everywhere. But here's the really hopeful part. Mindsets aren't permanent. They can be changed.
Okay, so how do you know which mindset you tend towards?
You can reflect on it. The research uses agreement questions. For instance, with intelligence, consider. Your intelligence is something very basic about you that you can't change very much. Do you lean towards agreeing or disagreeing?
But agreeing would be more fixed.
Right, versus a statement like, you can always substantially change how intelligent you are. Leaning towards that suggests a growth mindset.
And it applies to personality too.
Yep.
Same idea. Compare. You are a certain kind of person, and there is not much that can be done to really change that that's fixed, versus no matter what kind of person you are, you can always change substantially. That's growth.
And you might have different mindsets for different areas, like intelligence versus personality.
Absolutely. It's not always monolithic. But the core difference holds. The fixed mindset makes you worried about proving yourself. The growth mindset makes you focused on improving yourself.
Let's try a little thought experiment to feel the difference. Imagine you're learning, say, a new language. You're in a class.
Okay.
The instructor calls you up to the front, starts asking you questions in the new language. If you slip into a fixed mindset right then, what does that feel like?
Oof. Pressure, right. Your ability's on the line. You feel everyone watching, the instructor judging. Your ego tenses up.
Yeah, you can almost feel that knot in your stomach. Now, same situation, but try shifting into a growth mindset. You're a beginner, you're here to learn, the instructor isn't judging, they're a resource. What happens then? The tension kind of eases, doesn't it? Your mind feels more open. It's less about performing perfectly and more about engaging, trying, learning from mistakes.
That shift just in how you frame the situation, it's incredibly powerful.
It really is. And that's the core insight we've been exploring today, isn't it? This fundamental belief, are my qualities fixed or can I cultivate them? It just ripples outwards, shaping everything from how you handle a bad grade to how you approach your biggest goals.
So to leave you with something to think about,
Yeah.
if the experts are right, if our true potential really is unknown and unknowable, if it's limited less by inherent ability and more by passion, hard work, and training, what amazing possibilities might be just waiting for you to unlock? What could you achieve if you simply shifted your perspective on what's possible?